Now to the budget reaction. It's really copped it in the polls, hasn't it, this morning? It hasn't gone down incredibly well if you look at the opinion polls. And it begs the question, why did they end up revealing that power price forecast, which basically overwhelmed all else?
Yes, it was interesting they did this. This must have been a calculated decision to reveal power prices were going up by 50% in the budget, a story we broke last Monday. But I guess if the Australian Energy Regulator is talking to all Australian governments about this looming rise, the federal government would have come to the conclusion they could hardly hide the increase. The federal government is now attempting to weaponise this against the opposition, saying you hid your 20% price rise this year, which is only flowing through now. And I've reported that 30% the government is predicting next financial year is likely to be as high as 50%. I guess the government thinks that it can at least pin some of the blame on the old government by fessing up to the price rises now.
We were certainly aware of how big it would be, Kieran, the Treasurer and I and the Prime Minister and the entire government. Yes, we knew that this would get a lot of attention, but we also knew it was the right thing to do. Unlike my predecessor, Angus Taylor, who knew about a 20% increase in electricity prices and changed the law so that it came out a few days after the election, not a few days before.
He says he didn't know about it. Well, he signed the change in regulation in a way in which it couldn't be changed because it was done just before the government went into caretaker mode. Well, the budget papers are the budget papers. They're there for everyone to see, and we've been transparent. And I compare that with the former government that changed the law so people wouldn't know that this 20% increase was occurring.
Well, the opposition's Michaela Cash hit back at this on Sunday Agenda, saying, oh well, Labor should have cottoned on to the draft Australian Energy Regulator determination earlier this year, which flagged increases. Why did Angus Taylor and Scott Morrison push the determination on the first electricity price hike past the election? That was a bit dishonest, wasn't it?
Well, I fundamentally disagree with you. You'd also be aware that a draft determination actually came out in February. The government, now opposition, saw the determination when it was finally released. But in February of this year, a draft determination which set out the landscape, Andrew, was released.
Okay, but regulations were put through to push the final determination past the election. Do you concede that?
Again, a draft determination handed down in February. If they're too lazy to have read it, the Labor Party
after Angus Taylor pushed it past the election, correct?
I fundamentally disagree with you.
Anyway, that's what happened. And as I've said before, the government has given us the problem in the budget before the solution. The view in government was to get the budget out of the way and then attend to the answer on power and gas prices. If only they knew the answer. The way the PM appeared to be flailing about on this and tried to deflect blame this morning, it's clear there is no easy answer as far as the government is concerned. And this is the biggest headache in the life of this government so far: power prices, gas prices, Kieran.
So where does it end up? That's the question we've been asking all and sundry. The Energy Minister yesterday, the Treasurer has been asked uphill and down dale since the budget. What happens next?
And we're not getting a clear answer, I guess, Kieran. So as Anthony Albanese, before we heard him say it takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, I guess. The Treasurer Jim Chalmers has been described by his former mentor Wayne Swan previously as a fellow supporter of the Australian Workers' Union. Well, I just thought it was worth pointing out, it seems some of the solutions from Dan Walton, the National Secretary of the AWU, and Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, are pretty similar when it comes to arresting this gas and electricity price crisis. They're talking about cap prices and maybe a look at a windfall profits tax.
Every other nation around the world is putting in place extreme measures to protect their national interests. We should not be afraid or ashamed to follow suit and do the same thing. If they can't make those mega profits, if they're only making huge profits, that is still a reasonable outcome for them, but it should go hopefully some way to offsetting the pain and suffering for Australian workers and Australian businesses.
There's a code of conduct that applies to this industry, and we've said that we will work to make that code of conduct mandatory. That the PRRT take is a little bit up this year and a little bit up next year, and then trails away. I do understand that there is a substantial part of the community that would prefer that PRRT take was higher.
Well, the opposition's Mackay Cash said yesterday that capping prices will not work, that would act to constrain investment and supply. The only answer, she said, was encouraging more supply of gas.
You cannot talk about price caps if you are not at the same time saying we are going to address the supply of gas coming into the market. All a price cap will do is actually discourage players from bringing on supply.